Hello, friends and colleagues. Welcome to the Tourism Skillshop, hosted by State of Washington Tourism, SWT. My name is Matthew Ozuna, and I am the Destination Development Manager at SWT. I will introduce today's webinar on transformational travel. Please utilize the chat and say hello. Let us know where you are zooming in from today. Feel free to share your comments in the chat and use the Q&A feature as well. Mike Moe will also be joining us today. He is the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Tourism Development at SWT. Mike will monitor the chat and help address questions from the audience near the end of the webinar. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about the webinar series. The Tourism Skillshop is one of many industry educational programs from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage with colleagues across the tourism sector and broaden their industry knowledge, skills, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and discuss with industry experts. State of Washington Tourism will host live webinars of the Tourism Skillshop on the 3rd or 4th Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. These webinars are free and open to all tourism stakeholders. The webinars will also be recorded and shared with registrants as well as other users on the SWT YouTube channel. For Tourism Skillshop and other industry updates, visit the SWT industry website, sign up for the industry update newsletter, and follow SWT on LinkedIn. Tourism stakeholders may also join the SWT Facebook group for further discussion on topics related to Tourism Skillshop, on the Tourism Skillshop, and other industry news, issues, and events. Now, let's dive into today's webinar. This webinar in the Tourism Skillshop will explore the meaning of transformational travel and its application on Whidbey Island and Camano Island in the state of Washington. What is transformational travel? How does transformational travel impact businesses, nonprofits, visitors, and residents? What kind of resources and values must destination communities possess in preparation for a new age of travel and tourism? Guest speakers will address these and other questions associated with the emerging transformation economy and shifting consumer trends. Webinar attendees will learn how to guide transformational travel experiences in their destination communities and places of work that are more sustainable and holistic, if not regenerative. Our guest speakers today include Jake Haupert, CEO of the Transformational Travel Council, TTC. He will headline today's webinar. Other guest speakers include Sherrye Wyatt, representing Whidbey and Camano Islands Tourism, as well as two businesswomen from those islands, Krista Loercher of Whidbey Island Kayaking Co. and Mona Campbell from the Canopy Tours Northwest. Whidbey and Camano Islands Tourism is an early adopter of TTC's Transformative Travel Curriculum and Destination Regeneration Program. Panelists, thank you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to have this webinar with you and all the folks on the call. Before we dive into today's webinar, Sherrye, I'm sure a few folks know who you are. You've been in the tourism business for quite a while in Washington State. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your professional background?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So I have been with Whidbey and Camano Islands Tourism since 2010, moved to Whidbey Island in 2007, and was coming from Eastern Washington, from another rural part of the state, and was working in the wine industry and travel, the Apple Commission, and was working mostly in agriculture communications. And so my beginning with Whidbey Camano Islands was 2010. It's really been an exciting time, and it's gone really fast.
For sure. Yeah, you've seen the destination mature evolve over 13 years. Congratulations. Krista, how about you? What do you do with your business on the islands?
So Whidbey Island Kayaking provides guided kayak and paddleboard tours, as well as instruction and outfitting here on Whidbey Island, from about Coopville south to Clinton. It was an existing business, actually, and I purchased it in 2014 and have grown it from there.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And Mona, tell us a little bit more about what you do.
So I am one of several family members that operate Canopy Tours Northwest here on Camano. We operate a family farm that's been in our family for over 100 years. And the Canopy Tour Zipline Tour is one of several experiences that we sort of offer here, including team building, farm events, you pick lavender, things like that. And so we're very interested in developing our experiences here into the future. And so this program has been great, great for planning purposes and just envisioning the future.
Great. Thanks, Mona. Thanks for being here today.
Sure.
And Jake, what about you? Tell us about your journey into this space. I know it's probably a long and storied one. Why don't you give us a few of the highlights?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it tight. First, I just want to say thanks to you and Mike for having us and for the Whidbey crew to be here. They've become great friends over the last 18 months, and I'm really excited to share this opportunity with you guys and make sure that we get this wonderful story out. So, and then also I want to get out ahead of the fact that I'm down in Arizona for Mariners spring training, and I've got a house full of kids. So if you hear banging or screaming or whatever, or if my wife gets angry at the kids, you know why. So anyway, my background briefly, I knew early on what I wanted to do, and that was to be in travel. I started out with the Four Seasons brand in luxury travel, and that didn't take long for me to realize I was a little bit out of alignment with that and wanted to get into conservation and ecotourism. And so my career spans about 25 years now, really rooted in ecotourism in the late 90s, and then moving into sustainable tourism. And this great evolution into transformation most recently. For those, in the Northwest, you probably, or you might know me from my days at Evergreen Escapes. I founded Evergreen Escapes in 2006, an inbound tour operator that showcased the beautiful place that we call home for over 12 years, and did that alongside our friend Dan Moore, who many of you also know, and then exited in 2018 and moved all my energy and focus into the Transformational Travel Council. Transformational Travel Council is a global leader in transformational travel. We are building a thriving community and delivering transformative education, training, and events, and really harnessing the power of transformational travel and regenerative design and human solidarity that we hope will change the world.
Wow. That's awesome. Thanks, Jake. So transformational travel, let's roll up our sleeves and unpack that term. Tell us more about that, what that means. Is it just another buzzword, or can you kind of differentiate between all these other terms in the industry?
Yeah. So, back in 2013, 14, this was when, I really started hearing this term and, thrown about in travel as these sort of light bulb moments or epiphanies that we have when we travel. Me and some colleagues decided that we really wanted to dig into what is that, what were the ingredients, how did you create, or how could you unlock travel in a way that created more of these moments and experiences to learn and to grow. So early on, we had the opportunity to define what transformational travel is, and that is intentionally traveling to stretch, learn, and grow into new ways of being and engaging the world. And so I think that one of the important aspects of that definition is that it's active, that it's intentional, that it's something that you can participate in. So today, as we look at transformational travel, and I'll touch on the transformation economy as we go through this, it's really about moving designing experiences to guiding transformations. And, those of us in the trade, we have a really great opportunity to help people improve their lives, and with that, that opportunity to grow into better versions of themselves, they typically make better decisions in their lives, so transformational travel is certainly more of a buzzword. It's really rooted in the ancient travel and why we travel and how we travel. So questing and rite of passage and pilgrimage, but it doesn't always have to be heavy. It can be playful. It can be just this opportunity to get out and really rediscover who you are. And that tends to as I mentioned, bring benefit to the entire system, to our communities, the people and places that we visit.
Excellent, Jake. And maybe we should go back. I just saw this pop up in the chat. Why don't you tell us more about the Transformational Travel Council? Is there a definition for that?
I shared a little bit about what we do in my intro there, but ultimately, we have a global community. Matter of fact, we just gathered 100 people from 25 different countries in Slovenia for our annual gathering. We were able to talk about some of the challenging topics that travel and tourism is facing today, and really rooted in this idea of, change comes from within. So we have our membership. We've got educational courses and programs, one of which we're really going to be diving in today with, called Destination Regeneration, which is a year-long program that we take communities and destinations through and really introduce transformational travel practices and frameworks, but also regenerative development, regenerative design. And so, that's what I'm really excited to get into with our friends with Whidbey and Camano Island that have joined us today.
Excellent. And maybe can you kind of tell us more about regenerative tourism and how that relates to the transformational travel experience?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of definitions and skepticism around what is regenerative travel or regenerative tourism. And I always come back to someone that I admire immensely, and that's Anna Pollock. She's been banging this drum around regeneration and going beyond just sustainability practices and really shifting mindsets and getting people to go into a regenerative way of being, way of thinking for many years. And her definition is, at its simplest, regeneration is about creating the fertile conditions conducive for life to thrive. So in those conditions, in the overlay of transformational travel, when we talk about transformational travel, we can create the conditions for people to transform, but that is elevated or enhanced when travelers are visiting a destination that is healthy, that is thriving, where the individuals in the communities, the residents, from the practitioners and the experience providers, they're all harmonizing and in sync. And that creates this wonderful place for traveler or visitor and the visited to engage in a way that brings prosperity, that brings a sense of connection, that then in turns helps people transform, becomes better versions of themselves, both the traveler and the people that they encounter. At its simplest, travel is this place to exchange ideas and perspectives, to see what it's like to sit and be in someone else's shoes. And so when we talk about regeneration and the fertile conditions conducive for life to thrive, that is very focused on the community or the bioregion. And getting them in a place of coherence, where they're excited and ready to engage visitors, especially more mindful visitors. So we look at transformation and regeneration as truly symbiotic. You could argue that one can exist without the other, but in this case, we think that the future of tourism is really that interplay of the two.
Excellent. Yeah. And tell me more about the future. Tell me more about the market visitors. Who are these folks and what are they looking for?
Yeah, fantastic. I wish I had some of my data points to call upon at this moment. But coming off of the pandemic, we're seeing this newfound awareness that something isn't right. In some of our communities, there's systemic issues all around us. And tourism is one system that I think can be that can be healed and become better. So I think that right now we have this awakening, if you will, across the market of travelers, but then also within tourism, that we can be a bit more intentional, a bit more conscious about how we approach this. So we're seeing, this, the millennials and the Gen Zs especially leaning into like, how can I use travel as this tool for personal growth? How can I use this as an opportunity to understand my own identity, where I fit in the world, right? How can I become more self-aware? And so tourism is recognizing this shift. So that's why we hear these buzzwords, these terms, transformational travel and regenerative tourism, bantered about as buzzwords, when really, in my mind, at its essence, it's travel in its purest form.
Well put. Well put. No, I think we would all agree. Folks on the call would say the same thing. I mean, travel and tourism has changed my life. It's transformative. It's inspiring. It's enlightening. I mean, it's all of those things. It's taken me around the world into graduate school. It made some personal and professional friends that I'll keep forever. So no, totally get that. Totally get that. Let's talk more about TTC's work and its impact on businesses, nonprofits, residents, and communities. What is we kind of talked about the transformation economy, and how does TTC fit in? And maybe this is a good intro into the Transformation Travel Design Program.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at first glance, or a lot of people's reaction to this is it's awfully, self-centered, right? That what about the people and places that you're visiting, and that's really unfortunate, because, as I said earlier, any real positive change has to come from within. So when we talk about transformational travel, it is, through the individual. It is this process of individualization that we better understand the customer or the traveler in a way that we can really guide those transformations. And that's that evolution that I'm talking about, from transactions to experiences to transformation, or the transformation economy. And that is what is so incredible about it, is that it brings real value to those destinations and those businesses and those organizations that adopt these practices, because they're better understanding who their customer is, right? And this is the work that we're doing in the Transformation Economy Collaborative with Joe Pine, who's the thought leader of the experience economy and author of the experience economy, is really getting into how can this be its own economic opportunity, a distinct economic opportunity that really benefits the business by bringing in unprecedented value to the traveler, right? And so in that healthy dynamic where you have a traveler that is becoming more self-aware, becoming more intentional, becoming more present, then they are building a relationship with themselves and the business and the organization that they're engaging, and then even further, the people and places that they're visiting when they travel. And so with that, businesses, as an example, ultimately you're trying to build relationships. That's going to benefit. Good relationships are going to benefit the bottom line, right? They're going to bring, provide better value. They're going to bring on more loyalty. There's going to be more referrals. There's going to be a stronger buzz that's created from these experiences, more storytelling about the meaningful experiences they had when they traveled with an organization. So we're not seeing just this shift in travel, part of that Transformation Economy Collaborative, we're in the inaugural year of 7 years, is, it's cross-category. We're working with alongside Best Buy, of all places, that's focused on the transformation economy, or, Edward Jones Financial, or other healthcare organizations, ultimately all driven to provide an experience that is outcome focused. How can we guide transformations? How can we take customers and provide them value, which is centered around how can we be more confident, knowledgeable, healthy, or, as Joe says, healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Nice. Well, I'm going to save my next question for the entire group. We'll probably get into it a little later. Key components to foster transformational travel experiences in businesses and communities. But Jake, let's pivot and talk more specifically about these destination communities that have undergone the Destination Regeneration Program. I know of two, both in the Northwest. Can you elaborate on those communities before we do a deeper dive in Camano Island and Whidbey Island?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, I've got an amazing board of directors at the TTC, and Brian Mullis, who is one of the thought leaders around sustainable tourism, and founder of Sustainable Tourism International, came to me, a few years ago, and we started really looking at like, what can we do for destinations that really helps them take that leap from, a sustainability mindset into regenerative thinking and integrate transformational travel. And then really, underlay it with transformative learning, to help people shift mindsets and really embody the work necessary to become a regenerative destination. So we created the Destination Regeneration Program at that time. We worked with an international task force to create principles for regenerative places that we took through, or that we then worked with our two early adopters, Willamette Valley in Oregon, along with Travel Oregon, and then Whidbey and Camano Island. So we just finished, I think, about 15 months of work with Whidbey and Camano Island, and now we're moving into a second phase, which I'm really excited about, around implementation. So that's our Destination Regeneration Program. Includes transformational travel design practices and principles as well.
Excellent. Now, maybe this is a good time to share a promo video. Jake, would you like to introduce the video, or Sherrye?
I'm happy to, unless Sherrye, you want to jump in? Okay. Yeah. So this video was shot about 3/4 of the way through the entire program after our second in-person workshop, and I think it really captures the energy, the work, the transformation that happened, and just really excited to share that with the group. As often these things, it's hard to communicate the value and what this is and the meaning and purpose behind it, and I think this video does a good job of capturing the essence. So I invite you guys to sit back and enjoy it.
Okay, I will share my screen and we'll play it for the audience.
Travel is broken at the moment. The system itself is not working anymore, and it has put that just in front of our eyes. It helped us realize that we needed to rethink the way we operate in the world as human beings.
The Transformational Travel Council, we look at ourselves as a catalyst for positive change. We believe in the power and the potential of travel to impact lives, both the visitor and the visited.
We're having these complicated discussions around tourism around the world, and it's happening here too, and so this isn't abnormal. The difference that Whidbey and Camano Islands have done is they're doing something different about it, which is really remarkable.
What I heard from the community this last year was what we're doing is either so successful that we have so many people coming, or it's unsuccessful because we're feeling overwhelmed. And so we needed to rethink how we're doing what we're doing.
We saw the beginnings of some cohesion. I can't tell you how inspiring and invigorating that was, because we understand there's some discourse in this place.
I see where I live and how I live differently than when I arrived.
This is just slowing down and really paying attention and looking inward and outward at the same time to really do the right things now going forward in a very intentional way.
Well done, everyone. Sherrye, I think you're up.
Okay. Are you going to ask questions or shall I just dive in?
Yeah.
With a little history?
1 second. My video was playing in the background, so I couldn't hear you. So now I can. Thanks, Sherrye. Yes, I will queue up your questions. We are ready for you. Why the need for such a plan? How did this all get started? Just give the audience a bit of a background on that.
I think just real briefly, you know, all of us in destination development in this work had a shift during COVID. And for us, it was actually an interesting new elevation within the collaborations throughout our county. So we were, you know, at the table with county commissioners and economic development councils, and there was like an emergency task force that we were a part of. And it really elevated tourism to a different level. And we were the ones communicating more so to the community and to residents instead of just being the organization that was always just trying to get people here and tracking how much money they spend and how many nights they stayed. You know, it was a whole different kind of thinking was happening, and residents became, you know, the #1 priority through COVID and then even after. So we were thinking about, you know, what we need to do something differently. And plus my social media, even my own personal accounts, you know, were like filled with comments about how there's too much traffic and, you know, we need to rethink this. And before it gets so out of control, we need a new plan and let's reimagine this before it's too late, you know, before we're at a breaking point. So it was actually really quickly during May 2021 that a vlogger, you know, videographer from the Midwest was out here visiting. His name is DeMarco Baria, and he was with Joy of the Journey. And he was doing a really beautiful story about the Northwest and mentioned that after he visited with us, he was going to the global headquarters of the Transformational Travel Council in Seattle. And I said, well, who are they? You know, I need to know about this. They're in Seattle. So when he mentioned Jake, and I'm like, I know Jake from Evergreen Escapes. So I got a hold of him and I found out there was a class coming up that actually it was in August of 2021 and it ran all the way through December. And during that process, I had transformation taking place because it's a very in-depth personal approach to looking at creating better experiences in your destination. And I learned at that point that transformation happens at the point of uncomfortableness. So it's actually an interesting concept. And I started thinking about that. Yeah. So, you know, it's not you're just sliding along and this is so easy. It's like, you know, you have something where inside of you clicks, and that's when a true transformation takes place. So in October of 2021, I approached our committee and said, you know, we want to do a new strategic plan. We want to kind of take this and go a different direction. What do you think about this? And they were courageous. They have a great board, and they were willing to take this leap of faith, essentially in a program that was really new. And we committed and started the process, you know, put together a steering committee and started the journey. But it really started when I took that class. That class, by the way, is starting again in March. It's a 10-week course. And then I understand now the TTC has created a 3-day intensive that you could do instead, that I believe is in June of this year. So I, you know, I kind of recommended that if people are curious about how to, you know, start a little baby steps. those might be ways, because it really introduces you. And, you know, it was kind of intense. It was, you know, twice a week, 7:30 a.m., but I was popped out of bed, ready to go, because you're meeting people all over the world and you're hearing about things all over the world that gives you this new global perspective about this. And it felt like this new community. I'm still friends with many of them, and just, you know, started to recognize that this was going to be a journey that was happening everywhere. So we need to get on board. So anyway, that's how it started.
Sure. And strategic plans similar to this and community workshops happen across the state. Washington, state of Washington Tourism does a few of them with the Rural Tourism Support Program. Community engagement, in my experience, has always been a challenge when you're bringing community members across the community, different parts of the community. Can you tell us more about stakeholder engagement, and was that a challenge that you faced and how you overcame it, or if there were any other challenges that you faced and overcame? Essentially, what advice would you give to communities thinking about this process?
Well, it wasn't that hard to find, you know, 20 stakeholders that were interested in this. And I really just went out to our communities, you know, through the arts and agriculture and experience providers, lodgings, you know, talked to different people, and we collected 20 people willing to do it. But what I didn't tell them was actually what I didn't know was how involved it was really going to be and the commitment they were actually undertaking. So, you know, I didn't know what I didn't know. So once we got involved, they were like, well, this is a bigger deal, but they were committed and excited and didn't see that, you know, that was a problem. That was like, we were getting more for our money in a way. And then during the process, we also went out to the community with a survey, and we did have 700 people respond to the survey,
Wow.
which is impressive for a small, you know, 2-island community. And we learned a lot through those. And we're taking those to help us develop our values and kind of see what the bigger issues were, but also to kind of, you know, get some positive thoughts about how tourism weaves itself in, you know, because we're more holistic now. You know, we're not just that organization that gets people here. You know, it was much bigger than that. Now we're talking about transportation issues, access, you know, bridge building with nonprofits that are stewardship organizations. And we created a new trails guide with them that were 24 trails off the beaten path. And it just kind of like, we were going out in a whole different direction and dealing with groups we'd never dealt with before. So that kind of stakeholder engagement is going to continue. And we have a lot more of it to do, actually. So
yeah, just briefly, how many more phases of this program do you have ahead of you? And how many months or years?
I don't know, the rest of my life. I do know that we made a commitment, and our board made a commitment to engage the, you know, or to contract back really with the Transformational Travel Council to stay with us through the end of June, as we are taking this into community. So we do have a new plan, but there's some work to do to make sure that everybody sees themselves in it and feels ownership of it and gets where their part of it is. So it isn't, you know, just coming from us, you know, from the top down kind of thing, but really like everybody feels they have a voice at the table. And, you know, that's a challenge, but I'm up for it. We're excited. That's the next phase. I don't know what happens after that. I think it's the living document that goes on forever.
Yeah,
sure.
If I may jump in, Matt,
Yeah.
I just build on that. You know, this is really about unifying the community and getting empowered participation, right? The idea was that we're not going to just parachute in, do some work, and then head out. We wanted to build a community that was dedicated to. We even talked about 100-year vision, and
Wow.
right. We talked. One of the quotes that we brought up many times was, "We're planting seeds for trees whose shade we will never sit under." Right. So we're looking at it, you know, in a much more expansive way. And to do that, there is that transformative learning aspect, an unlearning before we can really introduce some of these new ways of engaging community and visitors in a much more healthy and prosperous way.
Excellent. No, I think that's great advice. So just to recap, it sounds like a huge time commitment, long-term commitment, values, forward progressive thinking, community members, residents, business owners, everyone's kind of coming together and charting this path. It's engaging, there's co-creation happening. Great, I get it. Maybe now is the perfect time to bring in our tourism stakeholders, our businesswomen, and ask them what takeaways, what observations did you see throughout this entire process? Krista and Mona?
Well, I'd say, you know, when we yeah, it's been a process. It's taken some time, and this involves changing our mindset as well. So I think in the beginning, there was a lot of, well, okay, so like this is the next marketing campaign. That's not what this is. This really is a different framework for making decisions, both within businesses, but also for the destination.
Sure.
Yeah. And, just to add on to that, I guess I would say that, it really changing one's perspective from thinking, how do we bring people here, to who are we, and how do we connect with people, in our community and the larger community. And so I think, really changing one's perspective that way makes you approach this problem completely differently. And I think, it just the simplicity of human connection describes it really well. And we determined sort of as our islands, and a really important concept was just that, building bridges amongst communities and people, and, being able to really reflect on what it is to be in this beautiful place and what we care about, and how do we express that in a story that's compelling for the people that come here, that also share, the interest in nature and history and art and culture that we value so much here also.
Yeah, good point. Well, let me ask you this. We talked about the entire destination coming together for a unified vision, shared values. If we have this idea at the destination across the community for the destination, how does this trickle down to your specific businesses? Can you give us a few examples of how transformational travel is baked into the services that you provide?
Mona?
I can go first. We operate a zipline tour, Canopy Tours Northwest. And one of the things that when the family sort of decided to enter the business was, wow, we have this beautiful place, and, people don't always get to be out in nature and experience something fun in nature. And we've learned all these things about the forest, and we can share some of that information. And so we started the business. And what we didn't realize is just not only is it fun, but, it pushes people a little bit beyond their comfort zone, and it allows them to really have this kind of authentic experience with the people that they're with. And it's transformative in that way. And we were really pleasantly surprised by that outcome, and really realized that this was something really special. It's not just about being out in the forest. It's about, I'm going to do this, and it's, I'm putting myself out there. And then that experience with these multi-generations of people that might not normally connect easily, they all share this, this wonder, this real experience. And that's sort of what I think travel is all about anyway, is like putting yourself in these new situations that force you to kind of peel away the layers and just experience it. And so, this course has been great, because I've thought of learning from all of the experiences of others, how we can really amplify that experience. And so, for us, that's been a really neat thing, of just that little bit of push outside of the comfort zone allows for this, richer, deeper experience.
Yeah. I'd say for us, well, we have such an opportunity, because when we have people out on tour, we have them trapped in boats for a couple of hours up to the whole day. Like, fantastic. We can just tell you a whole bunch of stuff, and I would say, like, when we started, it was about entertaining. But as I've gotten deeper into the business, it's really about education and explaining how our entire ecosystem works. Because as we're out there paddling, people are seeing the Cascade and the Olympics and the water and the forest and the eelgrass, and they're asking questions about salmon and orcas, and we can tell them that whole story. What I think is going to be different going forward is that we'll be able to incorporate questions for them about where they live. What are the bigger pictures? What are the bigger stories? What are the connected ecosystems where they are? And that's the potential for transformation, where they get to take that experience, put it in their hearts, and take it home with them. So, and some ways that we're doing that, so we use reservation software, and so, you know, for people to reserve their tours. And so last year, we just added a simple question. Why? Why are you signing up to do a kayak tour?
Nice.
And yeah, there were a bunch of people who are like, oh, have fun. That's awesome. And you are going to have fun. We're still going to do that. But there were a lot of people who took the opportunity to stop and say, well, why am I doing this? Oh, it's to celebrate, you know, this person's birthday in our family, or, you know, my friend has never been kayaking before and I want to share this experience, or whatever it is. And so that gets them to stop. And that's where we can start to change mindset. And also, as a business, that gives us really valuable information for how we can create a better experience for that customer. And really then maybe win a customer for life. And then another just really small example. So in terms of how we can then roll this out to our community, we offer on some of our tours, we offer snacks. You know, people are out there, they're working hard. And we've always tried to provide healthy snacks and not just like high sugar, you know, granola bars. But we have a wonderful online source here on Whidbey, Camano Island called the Food Hub, where local producers, farmers can sell their wares and people can order online. And this is something that really came out of COVID. So I was on there just a couple weeks ago, and we have a wonderful blueberry producer, and they do dried blueberries. And I was like, oh, that would be great. But they're these big packages. So I just sent a note out to them and said, hey, would you consider doing smaller packages and selling them wholesale? A week later, they wrote back, that was a great idea. We just did it, and we just put it on the Food Hub. You can order now.
Nice.
So here now on our tours, we're showcasing another local producer, maybe expanding their audience. They saw this as, hey, here's one other way to package and sell our product. If one person's interested, maybe others are too. So that's how we build bridges within our community.
Well done, Krista. Well done.
And Matt, that's the living system, right? In action. That's them cooperating. That's them building and connecting, you know, with each other, right? And that's how you start to create that. And it's moving away from some of those linear and mechanistic ways of approaching this, you know, and following the patterns that we see in nature and in Mother Earth, right? And we're seeing this when we're working with these folks up in Whidbey and Camano Island, is that shift into you know, a more expansive and more connected way of engaging each other in a holistic environment.
Good point, Jake. And do you have, or Sherrye, did you want to jump in?
I just want to add a couple of things about how we're looking at our events, our existing events, and shifting them a little bit to think a little differently and adding more elements to them that connect with local communities. So one example is a plein air event that happens on Whidbey Island. And I was just meeting with the organizers at the Pacific Northwest Art School and said, have you considered doing something on Camano Island at the same time? And they were like, oh, brother, you know, really the small volunteers, we're going to do more. And they're like, you know what, that's a great idea. Let's tie the two islands together. Let's do more. There's such a huge arts community over on both islands. So that was one example. And then Mona, there's the Northwest Glass Quest going on right now. Did you want to mention some of the things they've added?
it's really cool. This event's been going on for 14 years and it's in February. It's going on right now. And it's designed to bring, people here in the shoulder season or the actual off season. And this year, for the first time, they've added what they call a kind quester, where people can do all these different activities that are associated with nature, community, giving back, and the history of the place, and then be entered to win a little glass memento for that. And it's really cool and it's been so well received. They've received all kinds of donations to the local free pantry, and kids are writing postcards for the elderly Meals on Wheels program. Lots of different trash pickup, and there's been huge participation. And what's so just really impressive is that just putting the opportunity out there was all you had to do, was just say, look, these are activities you can do here that really support the community. And people loved it. And they said, sign me up. And I think that that's what's so inspiring, is if we can just provide some of the opportunities and get the word out there, I think we'll all see the wonderful human nature bloom. People will be able to find ways to contribute to the communities they're visiting.
I want to say one more thing about that, because
Go ahead,
there's
Sherrye.
three things that I've been mentioning in my community conversations on my listening tour, I call it, but that first are residents, to preserve and improve the islands for residents. Secondly is to create richer visitor experiences. And then third is just to harness the power of tourism to make it a force for good. And that's an example of it, where so visitors actually are contributing to making this a better place, instead of just love us and leave us. They actually have a moment where they do something that's great.
Well said. I hope to visit Camano Island and Whidbey Island soon to see how this process is unfolding. But we are right about that time for Q&A from the audience. Mike, do you have questions for us?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, panelists and people who are in the audience. I see a lot of familiar faces. It's great to have you guys on board. And Sherrye, you really just hit the nail on the head for, that's kind of the mission of our destination development program with SWT, is helping destinations create a place that's not only transformed for visitors, but also for residents. And I think that's really important. So we do have a couple of questions. Becky asks, I think this is for Jake, are there any books that you can recommend about transformational travel? I know you mentioned one earlier, but do you have other books that people can do their own research on transformational travel?
My favorite is a book called The Art of the Pilgrimage, and it is by Phil Cousineau. Phil Cousineau is the protege of Joseph Campbell. If you know The Hero's Journey, you know Joseph Campbell. And so you can, kind of understand what Art of Pilgrimage is looking at travel as this process for personal growth. And so that inspired me to, and others in my group, to give a presentation at the Adventure Travel World Summit in 2016 in Anchorage, Alaska, on the power of transformational travel. And that led to the movement that we've seen in transformational travel since then. It was on the cover of Vogue magazine as the trend of 2017, short after that, and has just continued to prosper. There's not a lot of other books that are specifically dedicated to the art of transformational travel or the science behind it. We have the Transformational Travel Journal, which is filled with guidance.
I got mine handy.
Guidance, prompts and challenges and white space to allow people to look at travel a little bit differently and bring a little bit more intention, and then hopefully drive even better results. But if you could go back to like 1999 or 1998, Jeffrey Kotler was really the first one to get into this, and he's got a book, I think it's called Transforming Through Travel or something like that. And that I think is one of the first, if not the first, that was dedicated to really unlocking travel, for the purpose of positive change and impact.
I love that people are putting suggestions of books into the chat. That's great. The next, and don't forget, if you have more questions, just use that Q&A tab there and ask your question. And I'll be sure to put it to our panelists. So this is a question about tracking and monitoring the transformative efforts. This comes from Lars. He's a digital marketing and transformational tourism, or works in digital marketing. And he asked, how do you track, monitor the efforts, the transformative efforts? Can you identify which efforts produce the most results? So let's start with that. Sherrye, how are you measuring your results through this process?
I'm looking forward to working with the Transformational Travel Council in our next phase in some of these very questions, because this is a different metric than just how many dollars did a traveler spend. Length of stay is something we're looking at, because we want them to have a deeper experience when they come, a richer, deeper experience, but it isn't a requirement. It's just something we're looking at. But Jake, like I said, I'm looking forward to learning more about how to do this, because we report to many municipalities and others, and they're used to a very certain way of us presenting. So we have a new way of presenting wherever it's going to be actual change that took place.
Krista, did you have something to add? It looked like you were about to say something. Okay. Jake, maybe in your work, do you have a list of the most effective efforts that produce the best results for tourism business by industry?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm getting that question completely. Are we talking about metrics here? Or are we talking about results?
Yeah, I think yeah, what are the outcomes that people can hope for if they undertake your program for a community?
From the destination perspective, healthier, more vibrant, more connected, more aligned, more impactful. I mean, this is the direction we're trying to push this, and we're starting to see that with results in Willamette Valley and Whidbey and Camano Island. Now, I think one of the biggest shifts here is, first of all, you have to shift your mind and measure what matters. What is important to the destination, right? So I think that's first and foremost. And we can get into the impacts of, like, after a traveler in some sort of satisfaction survey, are you happy? Do you feel more connected? Do you, or going deeper, do you feel more confident? Do you feel more knowledgeable? Do you feel more empathetic, right? So these are some of the metrics that we're looking at. But then you go beyond that, what is the bottom line impact? How much does it increase loyalty? How many more stories, positive stories, are coming out of a destination? That have positive impacts. And that's something that the Transformation Economy Collaborative is doing, as we are on this very leading edge of this shift, is how do we define, lead, and measure the impacts of transformation? And that's on the individual, the business, and the people and places that they visit, in the case of travel, or in the space of tourism.
Well, we'll redo the survey too, and see what the resident sentiment is a year later.
That's exactly where I was going to go, Sherrye. Resident sentiment, quality of life, giving back to the community in forms of scholarships or grants, or letting the community know that tax revenue was created, and therefore residents don't have to pay as much as they would otherwise. So, I mean, there's a whole different bundle of variables here. Jake, any other stories to tell about ways destination community or tourism gives back to communities in forms of scholarship, apprenticeships, programs to connect young people into tourism, or anything like that?
Yeah, the TTC, Transformational Travel Council, is a social purpose corporation, and we also have our nonprofit institute. And the idea is that as we continue to develop products and programs and courses for destinations and communities, that we do channel some of that back into an institute that helps more marginalized communities, or those that can't afford to have access to some of the work we're doing, whether that's the Transformational Travel Design course that Sherrye was mentioned, or our destination regeneration. I mean, there are some people way brighter than I that are dedicated to this work within our community and outside of it. So we're really hoping to build awareness and make sure that we're inclusive and accessible, because travel isn't in this current dynamic. And, for us to really build a healthy ecosystem, we need to be able to provide this education through scholarships and through grants. is the best that we can do as a small organization, and hopefully inspire our destinations and communities to bring that same ethos and integrity to the work.
Yeah.
That's a good segue, Jake, to the next question about DEI and how that interacts with the transformational travel experience.
Yeah, fantastic. So, we have a foundational framework that is based on work from Maslow to Jung to I mentioned Joseph Campbell's hero's journey to the experiential learning cycle. We've also done a deep dive into how we can improve connections with each other, right? And so that's the approach that we come at it. Is, with our transformation design course and our workshops and trainings, or even with our destination regeneration, is you have to look within first, right? We have to connect with self before we can start to connect with others, and so in the space of travel, and we're not a DEI firm, but we do understand that travel is about engaging, interacting with others, seeing the world through others' eyes. And you really can't do that unless you unpack your own identity, your own privilege, your own perception. So this is at the bedrock of everything that we do with our courses and education. And so, part of that in our process with our destinations was sitting in circle and having them go within, like, why are they here? What are their perceptions of the place? What are their perceptions of others? What are the residents' perceptions of the visitors? Because ultimately, as I said, it comes down to that human connection, as Mona mentioned. But if we don't have the opportunity or the tools or the space to look within first, then we're missing the opportunity for learning and growth.
Sherrye, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I just want to back up and mention one other really kind of exciting platform called The Kind Traveler. And I encourage you to look that up. And that's a platform that's very, very sophisticated, but they're very, very pure in how they do their work. And it's that every visit provides a contribution to the local community. And they work specifically with boutique lodgings that are like-minded with values that select nonprofits in the local community, so that when visitors are booking their stay, they're actually contributing to a local nonprofit in that community. I'm really excited about bringing that into our county. I'm not sure how it'll all fold out, but right now we already have a couple that are talking to Kind Travel directly. So that's a real measurable outcome.
Yeah, is that volunteerism, Jake? Is that that's on the table, and other forms of kind of giving back to the community, whether it's restoration of habitat or community time, community volunteerism?
I think that is something that is a result of this. It is really up to the community and the residents to define what that is and what engagement looks like. And that can take all different shapes or forms. It isn't centered around, a traveler's ego and desire to feel good about themselves. We create the space for them to engage in a way that the community feels really connected and proud of.
And with Kind Traveler, they actually pay something while they book. So
Kind Traveler is a great partner of ours, and that's part of the benefits of this program is connection to a larger ecosystem that's dedicated to doing this sort of more meaningful and thoughtful work in tourism.
But I think that's, working with the nonprofits here on the island, figuring out what are their challenges, where do they need help? Do they need more trail cleanup volunteers? Can we do more beach cleanups and things like that? And that's where, in terms of us reaching out, we need to break down the divisions between the .coms, the .edus, and the .orgs, and start working, and the .govs, and start working all together.
Thank you, Krista. Mike, we're just about out of time. Are there any other questions from the audience?
No, I answered Jillian's question through the chat, but thank you so much. And that was great. Great conversation today.
All right. Thanks, Mike. And thanks, panelists. Any other quick words of wisdom, parting advice before we sign off today? Jake, how about you first?
Oh, goodness. Words of wisdom. I think that for those in the audience, I know that there's a lot of skepticism around some of these buzzwords and this shift into transformation and regeneration. And I can assure you that the folks at Whidbey and Camano Island, while they were open-minded, brave, and bold, there was skepticism throughout. And
you have to trust the process.
Because it was an important part of that unlearning and getting connected and getting the community unified. With this program isn't for everyone. It's for those destinations that are a little bit more forward thinking, have some sustainability initiatives in motion, and are really looking to take that next leap, and be challenged. And so, our hope is that we can identify some communities in the future that are really modeled after, what the group in the community in Willamette Valley and then our friends in Whidbey and Camano Island are doing. I think that they're a North Star for destinations all around the planet. But it does take an openness, and there is risk associated whenever you venture into the unknown. But that's the invitation. And I think today our friends here are able to show that the results are real and impactful.
Thank you, Jake. Mona, what about you? Do you have any advice for us before we sign off today?
Well, I think that, it's not a single project or problem to solve. It's an ongoing way of thinking and way of living and way of being. And that mindset really, that mindset shift is what it's all about. And so it's exciting to think of the future and just co-creating with all these people in our community.
I agree. Krista, what about you?
It's Year of the Rabbit. So baby hops steps. It's not going to happen all in one fell swoop. It's small changes. It's conversations one-on-one. It's sharing with my crew, and like we said earlier, there was 100-year plan. It's not going to be overnight. This is work that's going to be going on for a long time, but we will be better for it.
That's for sure. And Sherrye, what about you?
I just have two quick things I wanted to say. That one of the people that I met during the Transformational Travel Council work was someone who'd crossed the Pacific in rowing across the Pacific, which is crazy, but she made a point that you cannot cross the Pacific without losing sight of the shore. And you had to have this certain courage and belief and trust in the process. And that took us a while to get, but I understand it now because then it all falls into place. We figure it all out. And then one thing I wanted to read from Anna Pollock, one more thing, that regenerative tourism is not anti-growth. It is simply asks that we grow the things that matter most to us in ways that benefit the entire system and never at the expense of others.
Well said. Thank you, Sherrye, Jake, Mona, and Krista. And thank you, audience, for joining us on today's Skillshop on transformational travel. We'll see you next month on the fourth Thursday at 10 to 11. And thanks again. Bye for now.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks,
Mike.
everybody.